Welcome to the ISB show. I'm your host, Sahil, covering the U.S. women's national team. The rest of the crew will be back for the second friendly, but the first friendly against Brazil is in the books. We're going to discuss that in this videos. If you've been enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the channel. So, yes, the U.S. women's national team got it done against Brazil behind Trinity Rodman in her return to the U.S. women's national team, getting an important goal and then a late Lindsay Heap's penalty. Not that late, but a later Lindsay Heap's penalty got it done. A lot to discuss in this match of some players I want to talk about specifically, but let me just start off with this. I was at the Japan match in San Diego, and of course, the U.S. women's national team lost that match. Just my luck when I was sitting up close right there for that particular match. But this one was a lot better, and I want to start with the back because that's what set the tone for this match. If you remember that match, Jane Campbell was very shaky in the goalkeeper position. We haven't really had that established goalkeeper since Alyssa Nair retired, and Tullis-Joyce had a fantastic performance in this particular match. We've seen how she's been performing for Manchester United, and I just felt safe. It felt solid. It felt safe. She was decisive, punching out crosses when she needed to. And then she came up with that one fantastic save that she had to make on Gio when Gio beat McKeown on not a breakaway, but a semi breakaway, I should say. And she made that fantastic Alyssa Nair-esque save. We always had one every match that Alyssa Nair was going to save the U.S. women's national team. In this case, Tullis-Joyce did it. So I think Emma Hayes really needs to consider Tullis-Joyce as perhaps maybe she is that number one. I'm not saying it's decided yet, but with performances like this, it just adds a different layer to the team because then you're not as worried. The defenders aren't as worried. The she was very, like I said, decisive on those crosses, and that's what you need in the goalkeeping position. A fantastic shutout in her debut, and I think now the conversation has started. Is this perhaps the next number one goalkeeper of the U.S. women's national team? We shall find out. Two other players that I thought had standout matches, and I want to get into both of them. I'll start with Lily Johannes first because this was an interesting match. I think some of Lindsay Heap's I, I don't know if I want to say, it's frailties because it's not really frailty. I think it's just, as we've said, she's just a step behind where she used to be prior. And Sam Coffey is solid in that defensive midfield role. But the creative midfield aspect, I think, is what this team has been lacking over the course of the last few years. And I think perhaps Lily Johannes may be able to provide that a little bit because just like she did in some of the previous matches, she delivers very incisive passes and balls that are actually threatening. Whereas I think Lindsay Heaps at times there's a lot of lateral movement. There's a lot of passes that don't necessarily break that first line. And I think Lily Johannes has the ability to deliver that. She drew the penalty. Yes, it was a little bit soft, but it was a penalty nonetheless. Got the penalty, and she's just building on these performances. So I think in that creative role, perhaps Lily Johannes is the answer. Now, I want to get to Alyssa Thompson because my local team is Angel City, and I get to see Alyssa Thompson quite often. And I've always thought Alyssa Thompson has fantastic skills and ability and is just waiting to become a breakout star if she's not already. But one thing I loved about this particular match is at times Alyssa Thompson sometimes gets stuck out on a wing, and her initial the initial move that she makes or the initial dribble she makes takes her away from goal. What I loved about this particular match is on that first goal is a prime example. She cuts inside. She makes the more dangerous run inside into the center and then comes more centrally and then delivers a fantastic ball to Trinity Rodman to score. And that started the tone for the U.S. women's national team. Now, I saw that a few more times in the match, and I think that is what Alyssa Thompson needs to do more of. And I'm loving that we're starting to see that from Alyssa Thompson because by making those cuts inside, it creates much, much more dangerous situations. And as she continues to develop, and I think that that confidence on the U.S. women's national team has started to grow, she's going to make more of those runs. And I think she's going to become a real problem for the other teams. I do want to talk about Brazil briefly because I think that there's one thing to note on this Brazilian national team. They have always had trouble now with the U.S. women's national team. I think it was the last 10 times they haven't been able to beat them. And I find a lot of times where, yes, these are tough matches. I think Brazil at there was about a period of maybe 20 minutes toward the end of the first half and perhaps parts of the second half where Brazil was really in the ascendancy, but there was not really too many dangerous moves that happened. And I don't know if it's that the U.S. women's national team just knows this Brazilian team very well at this point in time. They seem to struggle a little bit, Brazil, especially in the final third of creating things that are really dangerous. And the few times, which were very few and far between, that they did, Tullis-Joyce came and made it happen. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how both teams adjust in this second match that the two teams will play in San Jose. And I think now Brazil has to really come out and say, okay, can we actually do things that are going to threaten this U.S. women's national team? And for the U.S., it's really more about, okay, fine, we've sort of starting to establish the core a little bit. Which other players can really add to this creative midfield, to really players that are dynamic and are really going to take this team to the next level? Because the core is obviously there. It's been there for a while. Now, how can we get a few more players in there that'll become perhaps starters even based on where we are? Of course, Tierna Davidson is out. McKeown came in. Yes, she had a better match than the game against Japan, which was pretty awful. But I still felt there was a little bit more that she needs to get to. I still don't feel super solid with her back there like I do with some of the other stalwarts that are there. So perhaps that position is still a little bit up in the air without Tierna Davidson. So a lot to be figured out by Emma Hayes, but nonetheless, a good victory and good return for Trinity Rodman, a good win for the U.S. women's national team as they start back to winning ways in 2025. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we will see you all after the match on Tuesday. Again, U.S. women's national team getting it done 2-0 against Brazil. Keep watching the beautiful game.